What's up YouTube, Orstorm here, coming at you guys in another video. Today I'll be showing you my updated DDD deck profile. So just before I start off, I just want to let you guys know that I did talk about the new cards. There's a video that'll be up at the top, and there'll be a link down below in the description box, so you can go check out my thoughts on the new DDD cards. Definitely worth, I definitely talk ad nauseum about them, so if you're interested in more of an in-depth on the new cards, it's there. But anyways, let's move on to the cards that aren't in the list. Souls is something I have tried in the deck. I really do like it. It's a great level 1. It works well with builds that play Arfthog, because you can both search it and it can enable search place to get your Kepler. Basically, if you have souls, you activate souls in hand, special summon it, then its effect will then dump. It can then dump. And then assuming you have something like a Arfthog in hand, you activate Arfthog, add Kepler, normal summon Kepler, search your gate, activate gate, get your search, and then you can activate Soul's effect to either send the gate or send the other dead spells out of your board to the graveyard to then get some additional draws. Obviously that's a lot of great synergy with the deck. It's also a dark monster, so you can banish it with Allure of Darkness. It doesn't exactly always work well with Pot of Desires, but them's the breaks sometimes. Sometimes you're going to banish your one-ofs when you play Desires. Just how it is. So it's a really good card, something I do, but again, it's like even the reprint I think is setting at $50-$60, so I don't expect people to spend that kind of money on this deck. Crossout Designator is an obvious if you do happen to have it. Nibiru is something this deck loses to. I don't know if it's, and obviously Designator can be used to stop Ash Blossoms on your play since it's the main deck. If you have it, no reason not to play it, but obviously, it's, a tad bit expensive, and again, DDDs aren't exactly, a meta deck, so it's not something you want to, shelling out that kind of money on a rogue deck's not exactly recommended. Then Tell and Caesar are not in this particular build. I have seen some really decent combos with these guys. I just don't have room as much as I would like to play them, and it's more geared towards a pure variant. There are some cool things that these two cards enable now that Griffin, it makes them much easier to summon. I just don't have room for them. Tell, for example, can dump a DD or Dark Contract. It can dump your field spell, for example, which will then trigger the effect to add a DD or a DD monster from your extra deck or grave back to your hand, which is pretty nice. And Caesar can then be brought back off of a DDD effect to then be linked off to search a dark. It can give you another direct way to get to your Dark Contract cards. I just don't have room for them. And in this particular build, this is not a pure build. This is more of a combo-oriented build because that's what I like to play. But if you're interested in that kind of build, they definitely would. Pure DDD is definitely more viable than it was before. So it's something to think about with those two cards. As far as the cards are actually in the deck, we're moving on to 3 Ragnarok. Ragnarok is one of the best cards in the archetype. If you're not playing 3 of this, you're not playing DDD. It's great extender, can banish things when you're going second. I'm not going to talk too much about this guy. Apocalypse is something that got added when Gilgamesh was added to the picture. Gilgamesh enables you to put this in the Pelham zone, and then the Pelham effect allows you to special summon it. Assuming that you can special summon it, and then it'll be able to use with Lamia to Synchro summon Siegfried after you've already used your Gilgamesh's effect. So instead of summoning Siegfried early in the combo, you can summon it late in the combo now, and it also gives you a play to make under Gilgamesh's restriction. This is pretty nice. And then Copernicus is a great Foolish Burial tool. When it's normal special summon, puts something in the grave. It's a pretty strong effect for obvious reasons. It's main reasons here. So yeah, and then we have one Thomas. Thomas is definitely something you can flex out if you're looking to play something else. Personally, I think in this particular build, I wanted to at least try Thomas. Thomas is really strong because it gets you to your rank 8 plays. It can be a little clunky to summon, but its pendulum effect can be relevant sometimes, and I think it's pretty strong in that regard. Orthos is another card that I haven't played in my particular builds, but in this, there's a couple of new combos I've found with it. For example, if you have the new field spell and Orthos, you can put Orthos in the Pelham zone, activate Orthos to target the field spell, pop them both, and then the field spell will add Orthos to your hand. This is another good combo you can use with Gilgamesh, for example. If you have the field spell, you can use Orthos to pop it, and then by setting, and then you can add it back to hand to then be special summoned and keep going. It is also a tuner, which means you can't, if you're not under the now it does put you under restriction when you do special summon it. That's very important to remember. So you can't go into Halqifibrax, so you want to wait to summon this until later in your combo rather than earlier. But that's the main thing it's here for. You can also use it with the new level 4s to give you another way to climb straight into Siegfried, which is pretty dang cool. Next up, we have 3 Griffin. Griffin is one of the new cards, and I talked ad nauseum about it. It's a great extender. When it's special summoned out of the grave, it can grab your DD Headhunt or Trap card, which is a great new addition to the deck. And I just really think it's definitely a 3 of for sure. Then the slimes, we have 3 Swirl and 2 Necros. Necro Slime, something I've gone down to 2 on a lot of my lists because you don't really want to draw it that often, because it's definitely not something you want to see all the time, just some of the time. As far as Swirl Slime, it's one of the best. It's the #1 starter card in the deck. You want to get it so you can get to your fusions and start your plays and get going, and then you can banish it out of the grave to special summon something out of your hand. Then the 3 Lamias. Lamia is still obviously one of the best tuners in the entire game. You want to be able to keep summoning this over and over, so obviously you're going to max out on it. With Halqifibrax, a lot of the combos tend to go through at least 2, so you definitely want to have 3 so you can see it as often as possible. Then, of course, the final monsters for the DD lineup is 3 Kepler. Kepler is a fantastic search card, gets you to your search card and gets you to your fusion spell, gets you to the new field spell, which gets you in a moment. So pretty strong card. 3 Ash Blossom. This is kind of just the most generic hand trap. It's not going to stop most decks dead in their tracks, but it covers more bases than a lot of the other hand traps that are running around in the format. It's the main reason it's here. It's the most generic hand trap we currently have. Then for the Dark Contracts, we have one of the new one. This is the patented Dark Contract Documents. This is their new field spell. So it has an effect when your opponent summons a monster that's the same type as a DD you control. You burn them, and then they can't special monster at the same time breath its turn while it's on the face of the field. The issue with this effect is obviously your opponent can summon something to get rid of it. That will, if it does hit the grave, that will trigger its effect to cycle things back. But that being said, it is good enough to go off every once in a while, and you get incentives for leaving something like Gilgamesh on the board, because now if Gilgamesh is sitting on the board, you can simply just, you have the field spell out, it will lock your opponent out of link summons after their first one. Not every deck nowadays is playing things like Nightmare Phoenix, so this means that they have to commit to their first link summon, and they're locked out for the rest of the turn as long as Gilgamesh sits on the board. So that's definitely something to think about. And it also obviously works great with Siegfried and with, all the Halqifibrax decks that still are running around. Locking people out of those 2 particular summons can be pretty nice. Then, of course, we have the 3 Gate, the Dark Conscience. This is your search card, so obviously you want to max out on it. And then the 1 Swamp King, there's still some combos where you will use this, so you definitely still want to have it in your extra deck just in case. Then the 1 Called by the Grave, unfortunately the card's at 1. I would play 3 of it if it was not limited, but it's at 1 for a reason. And then for the draw cards, 3 Pot of Desires, and then 1 Upstart Goblin, and 3 Allure of Darkness. It's a pretty standard draw lineup, not too much to say here. And then Foolish Burial it's a deck that likes things in the grave, so obviously you play Foolish Burial. And then the new card is DD Headhunt. This is basically like you have a DDD, it's essentially a Snatch Steal. You just take your opponent's monster until the end phase of the next turn. But you can't attack with it. But if it's special summon from the extra, if you snatch an extra deck monster with effect, it's treated as a DDD monster, which means you can stack the new Xyz right on top of it, and they don't get it back. It's a pretty neat little trap card, searchable via Griffin, of course. So I really like having it in here. It gives yet another play going first without using a whole lot of resources, which is pretty good. Then for the extra deck, we have 2 of Flame King Genghis and the 1 Big Genghis. I've considered possibly expanding this fusion lineup a little bit more, maybe playing a second Genghis, but for now that's what I have in here. 2 Genghis because you're going to go through 2, and sometimes you want to be able to summon a High King Caesar. So and then High King Genghis tends to fill a lot of those level 8, combos you need to make. So it's really good in that regard. For the Synchros, the 1 Siegfried, this is one of the best Synchro monsters in the deck. It's free, it's free. It can actually work pretty decently with some of the, if you have a quick play card set, you can actually use it to negate Dark Ruler no more, which is cute, I guess. Then we have one Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. This is obviously one of the strongest synchro monsters, and it's been around and it's been a staple in DDD since the beginning. That hasn't really changed. The one Alexander, Alexander's still a really strong synchro monster. Not too much to say here. It helps you get to your bigger synchro plays. The one Savage Dragon, this works really well with the Cross Sheep here. And you can also tag into it with the next card, which is Formula Synchron. That you basically want to tag into this with Halqifibrax and then use Formula to tag into maybe your Savage Dragon, for example, on your opponent's turn, which is pretty cool. Siegfried doesn't need you can also tag into Siegfried because he doesn't require, he only requires the non-tutor monster to be a DDD. So if you have a little Genghis sitting on the board, you can still tag into Siegfried as well, which is pretty cool. Now, the new Exceed monster is our boy, DDD Amnesty King Doom Machina. So this is one of the new monsters, so its pendulum effect, as I talked to ad nauseam, pendulum effect is not really that relevant because it's not going to get there very easily most of the time. But it requires 2 level 10 Fiend monsters, but you don't need to worry about that. You can also Exceed summon it by using a DDD monster you control as material. The great thing about this is you can simply slap this on top of any DDD monster. If you have an Alexander sitting on the board, slap this on top of it. If you have an extra Genghis on the board, you can slap this on top of it. If you have a Ragnarok on the board, you can slap this on top of it. If you have a Gilgamesh left over, you can slap this on top of it. And its effect is actually pretty strong. So, and when it's Exceed summon, most of the time it's going to have some semblance of materials on it. You're usually going to want 2 because its effect, basically whenever a monster effect activates a monster effect, you detach 2 or pop a dark contract you control. So sometimes you may want to leave a dark contract up so this guy's effect can be free. You can attach that opponent's card as material. Now, it does not negate the effect, but it doesn't target and it gets rid of the monster on the board. So it works really well with some of your other negations. Let's say your opponent has now your opponent has to control the monster, so it can't negate things that are in the hand, obviously. But if your opponent has a monster on the board, let's say they activate the effect, you activate something to negate it, and they have something else on the board that activates. You can activate this too. It also works really well going second, obviously, because this immediately outs Dragoon. You just have to have a card to bait the Dragoon out, and then this can steal it because it doesn't target. It's a really strong card, and it gives you something to do with that Gilgamesh instead of leaving it on the board. Then for the other Exceeds, Harbinger is still a really strong Exceed. There's definitely tons of other rank 8s like Photon Lord you can play in the slot, but I personally like its battle protection effect. Sometimes comes up. Sometimes, and it's definitely not a weak card by any means. Kali Yuga is still one of the best going second plays in the game. Being able to, against certain matchups, being able to instantly turn everything off on your opponent's board and then clear it is obviously fantastic and really strong. Then we have High King Caesar. This guy's he's a little clunky to summon, but when you can get him out, being able to negate any monster effect summons is pretty dang strong. Then for the links, of course, we have Gilgamesh. Really, really strong card still. Typically in this build, you're going to go into it late, but if you have to go into it early, that's not necessarily bad at all anymore either. And then Cross Sheep is a really nice extender for any kind of fusion deck that's out there. I really like it in here because it's a really good starter play when it works with a lot of your other cards because you'll have let's say you have a small Genghis underneath it. And you fusion summon it. That will trigger. You can trigger that to special summon it back, and that will then trigger the Genghis on the board to special summoning something else back, and then you can go straight into Halqifibrax. So it's just a great laddering play to get you to. Speaking of Halqifibrax, as long as it's around, I'm gonna play it. I think it's obviously a really strong card in the deck. Being able to grab our Lamia straight from the deck, which will also trigger our DDD special summon effects, is pretty good. So that comes about to the end of the deck profile today. Let me know what you guys thought of this DDD deck profile down in the comment section down below. And as always, I thank you guys for watching. It's Warstorm, signing out.